Hello and welcome to episode 8 of my origin story. My name is Nora and I am recounting the story of my life. So, where we left off, I had just transferred from San Pedro High to Redondo Union High School, which at the time I wasn't thrilled about, but it actually ended up being a good thing because and I don't know if this is like a socioeconomic thing or a geographic thing. It definitely was a higher like income bracket, socioeconomic status of the people going to Redondo Union High, but the vibe there was just a lot more mellow than San Pedro High School. San Pedro High School was like very, very angry. We were always like trying to get in fights, and there was this like jocks and cool kids versus, like the punk and alt and goth kids, and just lots of drama, lots of, as I talked to you guys about, getting into trouble. And when I transferred to Redondo, there weren't actually any like punk or goth kids there, which was, I didn't know. So I was like, what do I do? Who are my people? The good news is that a good friend of mine from horseback riding, Denise, went to that school. And so I did know at least one person at the school, and she is kind of a hippie, and that was sort of the alt crowd at Redondo, was the hippies. And so they were like a more mild crowd, and there just wasn't the same kind of level of tension. It was a bigger campus, so there was more room, and it was just a nicer school. The food was better, the facilities were better, and I think that that actually ended up being a little bit of a blessing in disguise for me, because I was not going down a very good path at San Pedro High. I was definitely getting into trouble and hanging out with people that were getting into trouble. And we weren't like that much better at Redondo, but it was more like, we were just kind of hanging out and, smoking pot after school or whatnot, and not looking to like get in fights and stuff like that. So it was nice to have someone. She was a grade above me, but to sort of help me get introduced. So it wasn't a total fresh start for me. So I wasn't a complete and total newbie. And 10th grade was pretty unremarkable. I was just sort of establishing myself and making new friends. When I transferred, I was wanting to keep the option open about my sexual orientation. Pretty much everybody at San Pedro High School knew that I had been dating Ray and was, queer. But you have to like, I was still hoping that there might be some, heterosexual bits in me, internalized homophobia, whatever. So when I transferred to Redondo, it turned out that there was a girl there, and I don't remember her name. I don't even think we were friends, but she had gone to Pedro and also transferred to Redondo a little bit before I did. And so when I got there, she started telling people, oh, that's Nora and they're queer or whatever. And so I was getting word back, and I'm like, oh my God, not again. Like I already on the first day of high school at Pedro, people were coming up and asking me my sexual orientation, and now I'm at a new school. And I don't really remember at that point. Well, yeah, no, I still had hope that there was some like heterosexuality in me at that point. And so I wanted the optionality. I didn't want to be outed. It's never cool to out someone. And I actually confronted her, and I'm not someone who's like gets physical with people or whatever, but I actually did like I did like shove her up against the lockers. And I was like, you need and I was like, you need to stop talking to people about me right now, or we're going to have a really big problem. And as far as I know, that kind of solved it. But I was pretty angry. I was pretty upset. That was like very, very aggressive on my part to just be like, you need to shut up. Um, the nice thing is that there was an out lesbian couple at that school, and they were older. I think they were seniors when I was a sophomore. And it was really cool to see just like two women very comfortable in their relationship. And I, of course, was like, idolizing them because they're both hot, and it was sort of like a role model type thing, but I also was sort of still trying to figure out my own stuff. So I've spent most of 10th grade really just working because I was going to school. My dad still lived in San Pedro, and he, bless his heart, would drive me 30 minutes one way, and then he had to drive back every morning to drop me off at school, and then he would pick me up every day at 3 when school was over. So that man made an hour round trip drive twice a day for me so that I could get to and from school. On the other hand, my mom, when I was at her house, she had moved to Redondo, but it was North Redondo, so it wasn't that close to my high school. And she would drop me off at school on the way to work, but then I got out of school before she got home because she'd get home at like 5 or 6. And so that was kind of, I had to figure out like different ways to either get a ride home or walk to a friend's house or find somewhere to go. Occasionally I had to walk all the way home, which was like a pain because it was all uphill and it was not that close. And that was not great fun. So I really sort of put all of my energy and focus into getting a car and getting my driver's license. And my parents had said that however much money I raised for a car, they would match it. So like if I raised $1,000, they would give me $1,000. If I raised $2,000, they each give me $2,000 or whatnot. So I was saving with my little $4.90 an hour job and taking driver's ed. And my driver's ed guy was pretty cool. He actually let me take him to go show him my horse at some point when we were driving around learning stuff. And I did. I got my permit at 15 and I got my driver's license right at 16. And then I bought my first car, which was a 1989 Toyota Corolla. It was white. It's a total grandma car. And I paid $3,000 for it. So I had saved $1,000 and my parents each contributed $1,000. So it was a $3,000 car. And I thought it was going to be a good car because we bought it. It was like the original owners, this older couple. And it turned out it was actually needed a lot of work. So I paid $3,000 for it. It immediately needed a new starter and the window wouldn't roll down. Like it kind of was a money pit, but you know, I had a car. So that was great. So now I could drive, you know, myself to school from San Pedro, and I could also drive from my mom's house. And what ended up happening, though, was around that time when I was 16, my mom wasn't home very much. So she worked a lot, and my dad worked from home, so he was home all the time. And so I decided that since I was going to school in Redondo, and since I didn't want to drive 30 minutes to get to school, it was like 5 minutes from my mom's house, that I was going to start staying at my mom's house pretty much full time. So around the age of 16, I was old enough to make that decision for myself. And it was twofold. It was one, because it was closer, but the other reason was really because I could get away with more shit because I was less supervised at my mom's house. And all my friends, now my new friends, were in Redondo. You know, I still saw my Pedro people, but not as much. And I was like moving towards establishing myself in this new high school. So that was that. I would still, you know, go see my dad on occasion or hang out on the weekends. And I especially would go to my dad's house when he would be out of town. Like he would go to Catalina with his girlfriend. Their friend owned a house out there. So they would go there all the time for the weekends. So that was a good opportunity for me to like be home and have the house to myself. I absolutely capitalized on the fact that my parents did not like each other and did not speak to each other. And I could manipulate that to sort of be places where I wasn't supposed to be, or for them to not know where I was. I had forgot to mention this earlier, but when I was younger, like in elementary school, after they got divorced, they stopped speaking to each other completely. And so they would actually write letters to each other, like with whatever updates. And then if there was a check, if they had some financial thing, they would write a letter and they would give it to me or my brother to bring back and forth when we swapped on Fridays. And it became very apparent to me very quickly that these were not kind letters, because whatever was in the letter, anytime one parent would open it or the other, they would have like an emotional reaction. They would get really upset about it. And that was kind of shitty as a kid to be like a messenger of hate back and forth. And so I actually had to say to them at one point, I was like, I'm not going to carry these letters back and forth for you guys anymore. You need to figure it out. I'm like, I don't want to be in the middle. And that's pretty remarkable, I think, for like a 12-year-old to have to set that kind of boundary. And they respected it. And I think they started mailing letters. But anyways, point is that I was able to manipulate their hatred for each other to give myself, more freedom and less supervision. And also, in the 90s, we were kind of latchkey kids. We weren't, as I've mentioned, very highly supervised. So 10th grade kind of went by without a lot of, drama. I had my car. I was very excited. And I remember right before 11th grade started, I had a party at my dad's house because he was out of town in Catalina. And so I had all my San Pedro friends over to his house, and we had a party, and, we were drinking and whatnot. In fact, I don't remember everybody who was there, but I do recall that there used to be these drinks. I can't remember what they're called. They're like brain something, but they'd be like bright blue or bright green, just really, lots of fake dyes in them. And someone had drank some of those and also some booze, and they ended up throwing up in my backyard, and it like stained the sidewalk blue because of all the dye in the drink. So I had to try to get that out and like explain that to my dad when he came home. But the other thing from that party that had happened is I had a very, very, very good friend named Anthony. And Anthony, I don't remember your last name, or I would probably look you up to apologize for the part of the story I'm about to tell. But he was just a really nice guy. And he, I believe, was the first person that I told that I was gay. And he was cool with it. And we were like best friends. And I had decided that like, if I was ever going to be with a guy, like Anthony would be the guy. And I still really wanted to, there's this whole thing that people say, and I think people probably still say it to this day, which is just ridiculous, but they're like, how can you know you're gay if you've never had sex with a man? And people don't go around telling straight people, how do you know you're straight if you've never had sex with someone of the same sex? So it's like totally ridiculous, but it is a sort of pervasive attitude in our, compulsory, heterosexuality, heteronormative society that you are expected to, at least try to be straight. And so I was determined to try. And so I was like, well, Anthony's a safe guy. He's a good guy. I'll try with him. And so, we were under the influence. And I'm very glad that my father is not alive to hear this part of the story. But absolutely, me, Anthony, and one other person, I don't know who, but we were like going to sleep in my dad's bed. And, people were like sleeping in various parts of the house. And so I was in the middle. Someone is like sleeping passed out to the side of me. Anthony's on the other side of me. And Anthony and I started to kind of fool around. We made out a little bit. And we didn't like go all the way because basically we fooled around. I let him touch me. It was fine. I mean, I didn't dislike it or anything like that. Poor guy, though. Then I was just like kind of rolled over and went to bed. So I didn't touch him at all. But he's such a sweetheart. He was fine. But I had to get up early the next morning because I had to go to get my school ID photo for 11th grade, which is junior year, for my junior year. And so when I woke up in the morning, I felt. So what happened between him and me was 100% consensual. Absolutely. But when I woke up the next day, I felt gross about it. I felt like sick about what had happened. And I basically just ghosted him after that. I couldn't face him. I couldn't talk to him. I just felt I felt like I had been violated, even though, like I said, I want to be very clear. This was totally consensual on both sides, but I felt really gross about it. And So poor Anthony got ghosted, and this is like pre-cell phone days, so there's not a whole lot he can do about that. And I was in a different school, so if I ever remember his last name, I will look him up and apologize to him for doing that to him, because it really was shitty. He didn't do anything wrong. It was just my own stuff that I was dealing with, and my own, you know, sexuality and stuff like that. So, but that, I guess the good news of that is that kind of really confirmed for me that guys were just not for me. Like, despite my best efforts, despite me really wanting to give them a go, despite even finding ones that I found reasonable or decent, I was not sexually attracted to men. And I have no idea why. I guess I that's just like genetic or whatever. I don't know. I don't have a good, like, I have no idea. I've just always been gay, I guess. And I know that that's different from a lot of people's experiences, but I tried. A lot of people like give shit about people using the term gold star these days, because I guess from my understanding is some people are using it to like imply that somehow they are superior for not, having had sex with them. So gold star, if you don't know what that means, it typically means a lesbian who's never had sexual relationships with a cisgendered man. Um, and for me at that time, and so people I think sometimes use it to put down people who are like late bloomers, or people who are bisexual, or people who have had sex with men. I think that's ridiculous. Honestly, from my understanding of the term from the time, like when I was around, it was more like I didn't have sex with a man despite my best efforts, despite like trying several times. I just never was in a scenario where that was really going to happen, and it didn't work for me. But like I genuinely was trying to make an effort about it. So it's sort of like it's like a gold star is like if you somehow made it through your teenage years and young adult years despite all of the overwhelming pressure from society and the world to be heterosexual, that is, that is an exception, and it's not common. And it's not like, I don't say that as a point of pride. That's just like something in my life, and maybe it'll change in the future, who knows. But so I know that term's controversial, but it was not for lack of trying. So anyway, so I went to get my student ID and start my junior year of high school. And I had, a decent friend group there at Redondo Union, and was now pretty sure that I was going to be dating, women exclusively. And not in a hurry about it, but okay with it. But when you're in high school and everybody's pretty much heterosexual, there weren't a lot of queers around. The only other gay people that I knew of at that school were in a relationship, to women. So, but that changes in my junior year, and I think this is a good place to stop for today. And next time we'll get into what do I get up to. I'm going to join ROTC and meet a new queer person transfers to my school, and I meet one out in the wild, and you'll just have to wait and see what happens. If I get any romance in my life, or if I get rejected, who knows. All right, so that was for today. I hope you all have a good day. If anybody else has ever transferred schools, like, what was that like for you? How did you adjust? It's always hard. I was very lucky to have someone to sort of introduce me in social smoothing. That made a huge, huge difference for me. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good day.